Navigating the complexities of the construction industry requires fostering a culture conducive to project success. Research Team 405 has identified key cultural and behavioral challenges within capital projects. This presentation uncovers specific cultural barriers impacting AWP implementation and unveils a comprehensive analysis of these challenges, survey insights, case studies, and strategies to improve AWP performance and project outcomes. Here to present, please welcome Fernando España, Chad Roesti, Behzad Esmaili, Tom Sinkovich, and Dante Bruno.
All right. Good morning. Yeah, I'm Fernando España, president of ConstructX. I'm proud to have been part of this RT-405 group. I co-chaired it along with Francis Bindle of Chevron. He couldn't be here, he's out traveling. So, culture is in our nature. Part of the fabric of our organizations and projects. Everyone can sense a culture no matter where we wander. We're here today, and this whole group, we're sharing ideas and things to do, in the future. But how that translates into action is part of a culture challenge. So what do we hope you get out of this presentation? One, culture is a factor that drives success. We can thrive in a supportive culture or suffer in an oppressive one. Two, recognize the means to understand and measure it. Improvement is based on getting to a better future state, a more desired one. You need to understand the current state, of the culture that surrounds you to know it is changeable. Three, positively affect it through leadership. Like any change, you eventually will need to enlist leadership to overcome resistance and affect a positive culture shift. So why culture matters? Why do the things happen the way they do, right? Much of it is based on the type of culture that we can vary from an individually distributed control culture, or maybe better known as chaos. That's what you see on the left. But eventually you get to where you want to go, right? You always do. The opposite end is a hierarchical distributed control, which we call command and control, where leadership informs the masses of how they shall behave, and where deviations or clever initiatives are not permitted and actually may be frowned upon. We eventually get to where we're supposed to go. But culture is complex. We have organizational culture. Within organizations, we have departmental cultures. And out on our projects, we have a mix, depending on the people and organizations that come together to deliver it. Many of you have probably seen this ConstructX slide before, but there are 4 critical factors that affect project outcomes, especially leveraging AWP. People. To the extent which they are enabled to fully contribute to the success of a project leads to high levels of reliable performance. Process. The extent to which we employ robust processes and enforce them will lead to higher levels of repeatability. Technology. Given the extensive amount of data available, right, leveraging technology the right way will ensure scalability. However, the full potential for any organization, department, or project to reach the highest levels of success requires a supportive and nurturing culture. Without one, people don't thrive, processes are not effective, and technology becomes a burden. So, some unanswered questions here. We can ask this, who wants change? Everybody raises their hands. But not many want to tackle that challenge, right? Too big, too confusing. Where do I go anyway? However, look around. The world is changing every day. You heard a whole talk this morning about AI, right? That's coming our way. We have to be able to embrace it and make it work for us, right? Our personal lives quickly adapt, believe it or not, to the many conveniences that make our lives easier. Projects should as well. So, because why doesn't this happen? Is it fear of the rocking the boat? Is it ignorance? Is it choice? I'm good now, but I can always leave if things get a little bit out of hand. Or maybe a better offer comes along, I can get out of this organization. Right? So that's always the reality. There's been a lot of work on this, so we can delve a little deeper by clarifying the profound cultural aspects that are measurable metrics that address this diversity. This concept has been consistently highlighted from previous studies as well, right? So we have RT-405, all around communications and project success, 310, collaboration and communication, 365, which is around cultural shift and educational efforts, and DCC-04, company culture, needing to support training and cultural alignment. What we're trying to do here, of course, examine is how do we change that culture? What is the tangible approach to this? Maybe I'm looking at the wrong slide here. Okay, so in construction, there are several management systems, of course, and one of them is advanced work packaging, AWP. We know it as a CII best practice, and that is a solid structure that productivity organizes the efficient execution of a construction project through effective planning, executable processes, and integration across project participants. When done right, AWP is designed to improve project outcomes by ensuring better alignment and communication between engineering, procurement, construction, commissioning, and so forth. As you can see, it is a transformational process as it moves from early concept to mature practitioners. The concept has been defined, and many companies have already utilized it and seen its success, that it has credibility, right? However, from a long-term perspective, we need to focus on its adaptability by recognizing its positive impact on culture and how it contributes to achieving the maturity levels that we all want and expect as we venture into it. When enlightened of this fact, you learn to see other opportunities as well, that positively affect culture. The RT-405 team sought to answer this question: how could capital project organizations leverage organizational culture and behavior to drive AWP execution effectiveness and consistency? Bold statement there. The team brought together not only organizational psychology views, added construction management perspectives, but also brought together panel members and their expertise, willing to share real experiences. So, to show an example of how a culture can positively impact a project, I'd like to introduce Tom Sinkovich with ExxonMobil. Tom?
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Most of us have been on projects, sports teams, or whatever, where we're working in groups and things just feel right. This is where people understand the objectives and they understand their roles. Everybody does what they're supposed to be doing, and the results are good. At one time, we used to call these high-performing teams. Looking back, it was always fun working in that kind of environment. But you couldn't always point to how things got to this positive state. Hence the reference to the quote on the screen. So the question is, are there actions we can take to positively influence culture? Are there any particular challenges that arise when you're trying to implement a process like AWP or any other change for that matter? So let's take a look at a case study that illustrates a few things that one project team did to influence the development of their project culture. After providing some background on the case, I'm going to talk about two specific themes that will illustrate what we're talking about here. So I'll need to move quick, so let's get started. Okay, the case. The case involves the construction of two brand new chemicals units in the Houston area. Total capital spend was in excess of $2 billion. A rather large project, but the concepts I'm going to be talking about are scalable to any size project. The project was schedule-driven. In terms of background, the contracting strategy was reimbursable cost feed with a planned rollover to EPC. This is relevant for two reasons. First, with this approach, we could eliminate the time required for bidding between stages. Second, with this strategy, we knew that the key players were going to remain the same from the startup feed until completion of construction. Initially, there were three main players: my company, the owner, and the contractor, which was a consortium between an Italy-based engineering contractor and a US Gulf Coast-based constructor. It's also important to mention that while the main interface with engineering was through the Milan office, the engineering contractor had an affiliate based in India where much of the production engineering was going to be done. So for the purposes of this case, let's call them the fourth main player. In terms of time frame, FEED was started in March of 2018, and construction was completed in 2023. Finally, this project was to be implemented using what we called full deployment of AWP. This is where AWP is implemented right from the start of FEED through construction per the CII best practices. Just as an aside, after having completed the project, I remain a full supporter of AWP and all the benefits that it brings. Okay, I'm going to tell you the finish first. So let me tell you how the project ended up. So for starters, the project had an exemplary safety performance. In terms of the numbers, the TRIR was less than 0.1. I think it was 0.08, something like that. No one was seriously hurt on the project, and I'm convinced that AWP and the things that we did around culture had a lot to do with the safety success. The project benchmarked very well on schedule, well above average performance. As the project progressed, the team implemented several key technologies that help enhance the progress of construction. For example, the photo on the right is a screenshot of an IWP in augmented reality, and we were doing this in the 2021 timeframe. On top of that, there were numerous other ideas that came from various team members that were implemented to add value to the project. Now, I've never worked in a high-tech environment, so I can't directly compare, but the entrepreneurial vibe that we had on this team when it came to challenging the status quo made it a really fun place to work. Okay, so what were some of the things that we did to try to influence the development of our project culture? The first thing we did was develop a vision for what we wanted our culture to look like. What you're seeing here is the first page I put up at the FEED kickoff meeting in March of 2018. I wish I could tell you this was extensively reviewed or wordsmithed before the meeting, but it wasn't. In fact, I'm pretty sure I wrote it on the plane on the way over to the meeting. Be that as it may, what it does represent is an overall summary of the owner's team's vision of how we wanted to work together with our contractor partners. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can see it's comprised of some simple, forward-looking statements. The basic messages were, things are going to be different on this project. We're going to be working on something special, and we're all in it together. Very simple themes. Looking back, these comments weren't overly complicated because they didn't have to be, but they did set the tone that we wanted to set. So before we move on, keep in mind that a typical project timeline is usually quite short in the grand scheme of things. You almost have to get started right out of the gate if you're going to influence how your project culture develops, and that includes the safety culture. Okay. Next, I wanted to touch on how we communicated the objectives of the project to the contractors and the other team members as they joined. At my company, we typically prepare a document called the Project Objectives and Strategies, otherwise known as the POS. I'm sure many of you have worked with something similar. In my past experiences, these documents were often 20, 30, sometimes even 50 pages long. What was different this time is we took the time to consolidate the POS so it fit on one page. Now, that was quite difficult to do, but it ended up being a very valuable and useful exercise. It helped us understand what was really important. So I'm not going to go through this one in detail either, but what you see on the screen is the section dealing with construction. We kept this document evergreen throughout the course of the project. I believe we had 5 official versions before it was all said and done. So this was a document that was reviewed with each new team member as they joined the project, and I think it was very important in terms of building culture and getting everyone on the same page. And the pun is intended. Okay, the last tool I wanted to touch on was the idea of developing a set of behaviors that were supportive of achieving the project's goals. These were developed with involvement of all the key players, owner and contractor. In fact, we had a series of workshops that involved a cross-section of team members that helped develop these. Once again, not overly complicated. The ones that really stuck out to me were agile, innovative, and empowered. It's amazing what people will come up with when you give them the freedom to do so. Now, this wasn't something that was meant to be a one and done. We built a lot of communications and recognition programs around these behaviors. As a matter of fact, the process worked so well, we developed a separate set of behaviors for field construction that was also very effective. For one thing, we didn't want agile to be part of the construction worker's mindset. It just wouldn't work. When it was all said and done, the people doing the work had a pretty good understanding of what the goals and the objectives were. They also had a good understanding of how we wanted to work together to achieve those goals. And because they were involved in the discussions, there was a strong sense of ownership and commitment amongst the integrated team. Now, you might be asking, what does all this have to do with culture? Earlier, I mentioned that there was a large contingent in India that was going to be doing the production engineering. When it came time to bring this group on board, we decided to visit Mumbai and take the entire group through the package and a little bit more that I just described to you. We explained the project objectives, the desired behaviors, and why AWP and executing the work in the required sequence was so important. As the work went on, we provided regular positive reinforcement and recognition. The feedback that we got from these people and their leadership after doing all this was very positive, as were the project results. In this case, this really came into play when the COVID epidemic hit. Without getting into the details, this group did amazing things to keep the work going so that we can maintain continuity and complete engineering. My contention is that making the effort to build a positive culture almost always leads to better project results. In my experience, making the investment in culture is more important when things get tough on a project as opposed to when they are going well. Think about that. Okay. So that was the first theme involved in this case. The next theme, as you might guess, has to do with managing information. One of the most consequential realizations we made on the project was that we needed to have a world-class solution for managing key information. The other realization was neither of our contractor partners had the solution that we were looking for. As a result, we made the difficult decision to bring in a third party to organize and host the project information on a common platform that was accessible to anyone that needed it. What we're talking about here is the idea of consolidating information from many sources into one common platform. This includes engineering data, procurement data, and construction data. In this particular case, the data was organized and hosted on a cloud-based platform where the project team controlled security and access. This allowed for consolidating, organizing, and presenting data that supported the team with information they could use to positively impact the execution of the project. The point of this discussion is not to review the technical IT aspects of doing this, but to point out the cultural impacts of ensuring that information is made available when and where it's required. So let's look at a specific example. In this particular case, one of the key challenges for the project was to get approximately 30,000 pipe spools fabricated and delivered to site in the required sequence. Piping is almost always the critical path on these types of projects. So what you see in the pictures is how it's supposed to work. We just happen to have a security camera in the right spot. An installation work pack worth of pipe is ready to go on Monday morning. The pipe is installed by Friday, and the pipe for the next week's work is delivered by Friday afternoon. I wish it worked that way 100% of the time. For that to happen, you need to have an efficient supply chain, starting with production engineering right through to the pipe fabricator. So besides price, of course, the team had two other key criteria for selecting the pipe fabricator in this case. One was having the ability to store materials, fabricate and paint the pipe, and then ship it out, all from one location. That's not always the case. Sometimes these fabricators farm out some of the work. The second was having a robust production tracking process. In this case, the fabricator tracked each individual pipe spool through the production process using a barcode tracking system. What made this job different, at least in my experience, was that the team took the data generated by the pipe fabricator through their regular course of business into the project data cloud that we had established to allow for tracking pipe spool progress in real time. They could track individual spools, they could track the production backlog, whatever was needed. And once again, you might be asking, what does this have to do with culture? Let me tell you, having the connection with a key supplier partner was invaluable in this case. But more importantly, having the confidence in the information on pipe fabrication status or whatever other information was vital to the project was key. It allowed the team to focus on solving problems and removing barriers rather than spending energy chasing status. Having access and confidence in project information changed the entire dynamic of how the integrated team interacted with each other. There was only one truth, and there was nowhere to hide from it. Okay, to summarize the case, I'll say this. You can influence project culture, but you need to be focused and deliberate. The examples discussed here are consistent with this research team's findings, but they are just examples. Keep in mind, every project is different and the cultural challenges will be unique and different, but that's what makes our job so interesting. Finally, regarding the quote on the screen, you can have the best strategy in the world, but unless you've got people lined up to execute it, you might not get as far as you'd like. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bazad.
Thank you, Tom, for a great presentation. The case study that Tom presented is a great representation of how AWP can be implemented successfully by fostering the right culture. But we have a big question, how we can measure culture. Tom mentioned that I know it when I see it. We cannot ask Tom to go to every project that we have, we are using AWP. So we need a tool, we need to develop a tool to measure culture in our projects. And that's where we invited experts, because this is not a question that engineers can answer. We invited experts from organizational psychology, people who can help us to assess and measure culture. We had Frankie Kong and Dante Bruno on our team from Department of Psychology at Purdue University. Dante is with us today. And these people coached our industry advisory board to develop an assessment tool to measure culture in AWP projects. We conducted multiple activities. We had lots of sessions, and we asked questions how we can measure culture. We came up with 4 dimensions: leadership, value, norms, and coordination. And these are the very high-level dimensions. We cannot still measure culture with these. So we ask more questions. What do you mean by good leadership? What defines a good norm on a project? What is good coordination that we should see in our projects? So after that, we identified 17 aspects, as you can see on the screen. And these aspects, you have seen many of them in Tom's presentation and case study that we just saw. Leaders, they set their vision, they define a vision, and they communicate it with the team, and they maintain it throughout the project. They involve all parties to ensure alignment. They communicate their objectives effectively with team members. They leverage data. Data is a big part of it, to make sure that they can track key performance indices in the project. They motivate people and coordinate them to make sure that they can achieve the objectives that are set for them. And most important of all, combining all of this effort, they set the norms in the projects, how we are going to do business. That's really important, right? With all of these activities, with implementing all of these aspects, you set the norms in your project. And so we further continue try to see that how we can use these concepts and aspects to measure culture. And we adopted a technique called behavior-anchored rating scale, BARS, that provides a description of different situation and state in our project that describe what a good culture looks like. That's really important because culture has a descriptive nature. We cannot just use any Likert scale to measure culture. We need some description to describe what a poor performance looks like versus an excellent performance looks like. And here we have the BARS statements that we develop with our team members. Level 1 represents a poor performance, perhaps. Level 5 is an excellent performance. And you can benchmark, you can compare your performance in your project against all of these BARS statements. We have 85 statements. We have 17 factors, 5 statements for each factors, 85. And so you can leverage this tool to assess your culture. And this is one of the takeaways that you can have from RT-405. We are giving you a tool to measure your culture. Culture matters. Culture impacts your performance and likelihood of success in a project. Using the BARS statement that we are providing for you, you can assess your culture and pinpoint areas of improvement. That's really important. You can see which area you need to improve and focus on that. I give the stage to Dante to explain how we validated this tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Bazad. All right, I'm gonna pop over here. So now that we had a tool built by our team, we needed to apply this tool and use that application to understand if our tool was working as we intended. In testing out our tool, we had 2 main objectives, 2 broad questions you could say that we were trying to answer. The first was, should we be using this tool to measure culture? Like Tom mentioned earlier, a lot of people have ideas about culture that fall under the I know it when I see it mentality. But we also, or rather, we often fail to define it. And even when we're able to define it with various terminology, we usually struggle to measure it. And I mean quantify it in a way that's trackable. Look, we can stand up here all day and throw around buzzwords, but if we can't put a number on something, how can we make meaningful changes? Or be sure that those changes have the impact we want them to. So by testing out our tool, we wanted to make sure it was working as intended, that it was viable. Essentially, should we even be using this? Our second major question was, does culture predict anything? It's nice to put a number on it, but we also want to know the so what, right? If culture is so important, if it eats strategy for breakfast, our tool should prove that. So by testing it out, we wanted to understand exactly what metrics are being influenced by culture for employees. So to answer these two questions, we surveyed 142 people in the construction industry. We gave them our bars tool, and then we also asked them various questions about their performance, about their experiences at work, and we analyzed the data. And what we found was that people tended to interact with culture, think about it in two key ways or two broad dimensions. And those broad dimensions do, in fact, positively influence their work experiences. So to get into some of the details here, broad dimension 1. This is all about vertical alignment, or why people do their work. And it's made up of these 9 questions from our tool. Things like vision casting and boundary spanning and having a growth mindset. What we found was that when people said that their project had a more developed culture around these 9 items, that was associated with higher work quality, with better relationships with management and leaders, with higher job satisfaction and higher psychological safety, and lower stress for employees. Now, on the other hand, broad dimension 2, this is all about horizontal alignment across the organizational hierarchy and how people are doing their work. So this broad dimension is based off of these 8 items from our tool. And we found that when people rated their projects as being more developed across these 8 items, it was associated with higher work quantity for both teams and individuals, with higher job satisfaction and better workflow throughout the project. Now, I want to point out a key difference here, which is that each of these dimensions, yes, they benefit performance and work experience, but they're contributing something unique in line with their focus, with horizontal alignment versus vertical alignment up the hierarchy of a project. So I know we're short on time, so I'm going to move through. In summary, in testing out this tool, we were able to answer these 2 questions. Should we be using this tool to measure culture? Yes, our culture measure captures distinct and important aspects of culture in this industry. And does it predict anything? Absolutely. It predicts important variables or important outcomes for employees in this industry. We also gained some extra insights on top of that. We saw that culture is complex. These distinct components interact differently for people. And we also found that this tool we built was applicable for AWP, but also for those without AWP experience, so for projects kind of across the industry. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Chad to talk more about our key findings.
Thank you, Dante. So Bazad and Dante discussed the 4 main cultural aspects, the leadership, value, norm, and coordination, and the definition of the bars. These were used in our data collection. Now I'm going to discuss the surveys, the data collection, and subsequent standard correlations derived from the surveys. Now I know this is everyone's favorite parts. I'll be going through this quick, and you can refer to the handout. Well, in this case, it's on the app. There's a download in your app you can look at for more details. And all the backup data is going to be in the report that's available in the fall. So survey 1, this is a performance survey that was aimed for the project managers. This survey was questioning project performance in association with AWP adoption measured with the specific project characteristics of data collection, path of construction, material management, and scheduling. 29 individuals completed this initial survey with data received from 25 unique projects. From these projects, we selected 14. 11 projects were unfortunately dropped as 8 had not provided the required cultural data, and 3 projects had skewed data on culture. They maximized the values for each of the questions. Survey 2, we returned to those 14 selected projects and provided the project team members the cultural survey, which introduced the behaviorally anchored rating scale. That's the bars we were talking about. The intent was to measure their interpretation of cultural maturity of the specific projects. The second cultural survey request netted 24 responses from those specific project team members. These 24 responses were then used to correlate against the project performance. That was the data collected in the survey 1. So we're researching if we could determine a dynamic where typical project metrics may be influenced by cultural factors. We found that some project characteristics may shape or alter cultural norms within a project organization. So as we move on to the next slides, we'll show the strong correlation between cultural factors defined in the download that's located on the conference app and the AWP adoption metrics. So these next slides outline at a high level the correlations between the 4 project AWP metrics, data collection, path of construction, material management, and schedule performance. Here you'll see the AWP adoption metrics at the top and our defined cultural factors on the side. So we're only discussing here the metrics with the strongest correlations. Full details will be in that project report. So this slide shows a correlation between data collection and our 4 cultural aspects. You can see the high correlations in value and coordination that follow closely with what Tom revealed in his case study. Promoting a team that is agile, innovative, and empowered promotes project success. Specifically, the cultural sub-factors uphold psychological safety and alignment on goals have high positive correlations. This shows that where work environment is structured to encourage individuals to voice their opinions without fear of retribution, and when project team members have open alignment and clear goals, they are more free to coordinate objectives. Moving on to path of construction. So this development of the path of construction typically occurs during the early stages of the project planning and is crucial as it establishes a roadmap for the entire construction process. Specifically, it's observed that project teams that place less value on innovation for development of new products, ideas, or ways of working tend to hold more path of construction sessions. Additionally, when team members understand and use project-specific terminology in both formal and informal settings, it enhances early collaboration to define path of construction at the pre-feed stage. The takeaway here is early definition of standardized project terminology and promoting innovation leads to project success. This correlates directly with Tom's case study with our early promotion of innovation and collaboration as key supporting behaviors. The material management. So the material management ensures efficient project flow and cost control in construction and manufacturing by planning, storing, and controlling materials to maintain their availability to support the planned construction activities. The study found that success of material management is led by leaders proactively managing teams' alignment on contribution expectations and promoting accountability. Like we saw with the data collection metrics, coordination again stands out as a behavioral correlation with project success. The team's clear understanding of expected contribution confirms reduction in delay of IWP execution due to material availability. In his case study, Tom showed how this strong correlation in leadership, accountability, and clear agreement on project objectives and strategies helped lead to his project success. So as you can see, we found the highest correlations to cultural factors in the AWP metric scheduling performance. So scheduling performance assesses adherence to a planned timeline that is essential for efficient time management and productivity. The data shows that successful scheduling is influenced by all dimensions of an organization's culture. As proven here and in the case study, proactive leadership, consistent and clear communication, and promoting workforce positivity, and just giving opportunity to individuals to claim ownership in their work through open collaboration and communication seems to promote a sense of pride and accomplishment and job satisfaction. So acknowledging team and individual successes seem to motivate the team and leads to reduced IWP delay due to RFI, and strongly correlates with CWP timely completions. So final reflection back to the case study, leadership and creation of a leadership team to scale or fit for purpose to the size or complexity of the projects required. As Tom states in his case study, plan the work, work the plan. Open alignment and clear communication on goals and culture, data in and information out, coordination, that's the key to drive results in the field, especially in complex projects. And with that, I'm going to move back to Fernando for a call to action.
All right, thank you, Chad. Also, thank you, Basad, Dante, and Tom for your efforts today. It was fantastic. It's been an exciting team. So, all right, some key takeaways, hopefully. Again, culture is real. It's a factor on how well our organizations, departments, and projects function, how well we adapt AWP to the types and get the types of outcomes that we'd like, and how we can deliver our projects. We can measure it. We have the means to do that, right? And you can manage it, but leadership is required. So culture matters for the individual team and project outcomes. So let's look at some things that we should be doing. One is be objective, right? Assess your current culture. Be purposeful, right? Organize and engage a core group, right? One of the key things that I got out of this was psychological safety. You know, let people contribute if they can. If you're going to block them, it's not good, right? Be honest. Evaluate your AWP practice. Get out there, look at what you're really doing. Are you really proud of what you got, or are you just following a process that may not be as effective as you think? Be intentional. Improve with the SMART goals and plans, and there's a lot of CII practices that you should be leveraging. And be bold, right? Get leadership, sponsorship, and launch, right? It's really key. So you can look out for the report and tool that's coming out in September. And again, I want to thank my co-chair, Francis Bindle, who could not be here, for his endless support. And I also want to recognize Haley out here with her tireless effort, kept us all together. Couldn't have done it without you either. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I think with that, we will now open up for questions. Paul?
Thank you, Fernando. I'll search here for a couple of questions. This one covers a few of the questions asked. Who, when, and how would you suggest using the culture assessment tool? So there's three, who, when, and how.
Yeah. Hey, Dante, if you could go ahead and start with that might be good, and then maybe Tom.
Yeah, sure. I can add a little bit there. So this assessment tool is obviously like any metric you want to track. So it's very important to have a baseline to understand where you're at coming in, with the understanding that, you know, people are dynamic and processes are dynamic. So you want to make sure that you track it at regular milestones or when big changes are happening throughout your project, I think is very important, any changes that go on. Yeah. If you want to add some.
Yeah, I think Dante hit it right. Typically, you know, the project goes through a number of stages, and you want to particularly focus on when you're bringing in big groups of people in and other people going out, those transitions, and they're always very important to manage, and you need to have a special attention when you're trying to continue your culture when that's happening.
Yeah. Chad, did you have anything to add to that?
No.
Yeah.
Is it more of an owner-driven tool or contractor, or how does that decision get made?
Well, we're also talking about the organizations. So yes, owners, EPCs, you know, contractors. This is a great tool to look within your own organization and how you are going to improve how you perform. So these assessments and these measures are not meant to be one and done, right? They're absolutely something that you want to track over time. And the way that we even assess AWP programs and capabilities and readiness conditions, right? It's hey, where are you at the beginning? Where are you now? And where, you know, how's it tracking to where you want to be? So it's good to reflect on what you can measure out of these assessments and then carry it forward, right? But you have to be tenacious, you have to be deliberate, as Tom said earlier. Right?
Okay. One more question before we're out of time. Once the tool is used, how do we utilize the results? Are there any proposed actions to address these findings?
Yeah. Chad, you want to take a shot at it?
I think this is part for the tool, Dave, the tool question.
You want to take?
Sure, yes. For the tool, when, for example, you assess that on vision casting, maybe you are falling behind on some areas, you can focus on that specific area and invest on it, right? You can retrain some of your team members to try to have some group meetings, try to overcome some of the challenges that you already have. In addition to that, in the report, you will see that we collected data from the tool and also performance metrics on completed projects. So you will see that which of these aspects of the tool that we have developed are more correlated with performance metrics that we have at the end, such as cost, schedule, quality, and so forth, right? So you can say that maybe on this project, I have a priority on my schedule. So which of these cultural factors I need to focus on to make sure that the culture is reinforcing my schedule performance. So that's how you can use the tool and to pinpoint the areas of improvement using BARS statement.
Yeah. And I think in the future, especially with data collection, and we heard about AI, you know, it's going to give us the ability to see in real time, you know, how we are really performing. And if we can look at KPIs and assessments, I think that's going to be pretty powerful in the future. How well are we doing? You know, where do people need support, and how do we get alignment across the entire supply chain?
And this doesn't have to be an either or, right? At some point, at some level, hopefully at the leadership level, you've got alignment on the objectives and what you're trying to do and where you are. So assessing the culture and talking about culture should be a regular thing. It's not something you do at this point in time or this point. This is a continuous thing. My case sounded like it might have been, you know, points in time, but it's a continuous thing. So making these assessments and taking action it's a requirement of management. That's the way I look at it. It's simply a requirement of management and leadership to you know, assess what your people are thinking, how they're performing, and then take follow-up action to make sure you're going in the right direction.
Thank you for your work. There's a few more questions in the chat. I'm sure you'll answer those. And the products of the research are also in the chat. So I mean in the app. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.